Welcome into the Gaming Discourse. I'm Tyler Frater alongside Richard De La Cruz.
Hello.
And Chief Engineer Lieutenant Commander Connor for Raider.
Hello.
It is Monday, May 8th, 2023. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse, where you find videos. Patreon.com/The Gaming Discourse. You can support us, Gaming Discourse FM.
Yes, Gaming Discourse FM.
Which is our sister channel. You want to talk about it, Richard?
Yeah, we on YouTube highlight some of our favorite video game music from across the pantheon of the years of gaming that has been out creating video game music.
Yep, and that's every Wednesday?
Every Wednesday, yes. We try to make it every Wednesday.
And I'm pretty sure I put the on our main channel, I have the playlist.
Oh, thank you.
Somewhere on our main channel. I try to put everything there. Go check that stuff out. We have lots to get into. We're going to talk about Phil Spencer lighting the world on fire. Not really, but kind of. And we got other
Lots
news.
of discussion.
Richard's got a story at some point.
Yes, the small one,
That's the only reason that I was going to cancel the podcast, and Richard's like, I got mad at work. And I was like, well,
let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Yeah.
Connor,
yes.
Why don't you start off with what you've
I've been playing more Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlords.
Okay.
And I have developed this, like in-game, I developed this odd...
Preface?
Preface. This odd platonic romance with another lord. Because when you start the game, you don't have any holdings, anything like that. So, I started doing mercenary work. Worked with him, ended up like being in a lot of battles with him a lot. So, our reputation started growing. And then, as time went on, doing tournaments, him and I ended up facing off a lot.
Wow, okay.
And so our reputation got building. And now I'm in one kingdom, he's in another kingdom. We're at war. I've captured him. He's captured me. It's just this weird back and forth that's going on between us. But we both have really high reputation of each other.
So it's not a rivalry as much as it's like an intense bromance.
Yes.
Wow, that's actually
it
really
is the
funny.
intensest bromance.
How does the game manage that? Like, how does it make it a positive relationship as opposed to a negative relationship? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. So you do have like a relationship modifiers with people you interact with based off of your traits, their traits, if you've ever helped them or if you've, fucked them over.
Okay.
And him and I have just always, he's the only one that has the relationship modifier. It's parasocial for me. It is purely fictitious for me. But so I've just worked with him enough, been on his side in battles enough, and aided him enough that it's grown the reputation meter towards the positive end of the spectrum.
Interesting.
Yeah,
that's a really cool emergent little detail.
Yeah.
So you have him captured.
I released him.
You released him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that was very nice of you.
Yes.
Are you going to try and make peace? What's your next steps here?
I'm not in charge of the kingdom.
Oh, you're not?
No.
Oh, interesting.
I'm just a pawn, and so is he.
Oh, okay. So you guys are like generals.
Yeah, we're just lords in these kingdoms, and we've end up fighting each other every now and then.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
And then this is the second time our two kingdoms have been at war with each other, and like in the interim, we faced each other in tournaments.
But you guys respect one another.
Yes.
All right. That's
and
cool.
like
that's a fun
when
story.
you go into like combat, there's a little if you're leading an army, there's a little dialogue beforehand, and him and I have faced off in battles before where I'm leading an army, he's leading an army, and like it's friendly. It's friendly conversation. It's like, shame I have to fight you on the battlefield.
Is that really the...
Yes.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
I see. I played Bannerlord a little bit when it came out, obviously.
And then you were running around with your 3 peasants and got
because it's like I don't know
murdered by 8 billion bandits.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's one of those games where it drops you and it's like, okay, I want to be a king. And it's like...
Figure it out.
Figure it out. First, you're going to get killed. A lot. It sounds like
Not killed.
Captured, sure. Well,
Never seen again.
Exactly.
Well, I'm glad things are working out for... What's this man's name?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
You don't remember?
It's not like normal names. It's all gibberish names that are made up for these pretend cultures.
Okay. Well, that's cool. That's a really cool, like, emergent little thing. I wonder how often that happens when people play the game. They have a friendly rival who they happen to go to war against all the time. Anything else, Connor?
No.
Okay. Richard?
I've been playing some more of Octopath Traveler 2. Continuing some selected chapters of some of the characters that I am roaming around with. And I got to a point where I don't want to say the game surprised me, but I was last time I talked about it, I was hoping that there was more interaction between the characters than the surface level. Hi, hello, how are you? And let's travel together. And after I beat a certain chapter, there ended up uncovering a kind of a side sub-story featuring two of the characters where my cleric Temenos and my thief Throne, while she was in the Assassin's Guild, always heard about a treasure that was inside of the church that Temenos is from. And so she kind of is just like, you want to go check that out? And Temenos is kind of like, all right, fine, I guess. Yeah, I got nothing better to do. So you have just this little side story involving them, and you uncover whatever secret goes on there, which may have something to play into later in the game. So if you decide to not do that, you might miss like a crucial plot point, but I don't know yet since I haven't got there myself.
Oh,
but
okay.
it is I am happy that there is more to your companions than just, once again, the surface level introduction, you're on my team, and then that's it. So their stories will probably weave more and more into each other. But I'm still very much enjoying it, and I'm still very much enjoying how each character's stories are unfolding. And I do like the reasoning for each of their, the reason why each of them are there. So I just have to gather all the other characters, because I think I have 5 right now, and there's like 3 others to like collect on the East continent, which I'll go do that later. And it kind of gets really weird because already I'm at a certain level with these characters.
Sure.
And so when I encounter the new ones,
pick up the slack.
are they on level 1 or whatever?
Yeah.
So
that's kind of the awkward thing with RPGs where you collect parties, because it's like if you find somebody late, like I remember in Dragon Age Inquisition, I don't remember if you meet all the party members sequentially or if it's random after a few, but I remember the character Cole, who was like this really mysterious, soft-spoken rogue.
Mm-hmm.
I remember meeting Cole really late, and I just never did anything with Cole.
Yeah.
But it's like you've developed so much of a relationship with like Iron Bull and all these other characters, and then you get one of those late guys, and it's like, okay, but
yeah,
you know,
it really sucks.
There isn't enough time. It kind of feels like there isn't enough time for the game to build that relationship like it did with the characters that were there before. So
because they could have really cool stories, or they could have underdeveloped
definitely.
stories. That's a problem with Persona 5 as well. There's a late game character that's could be very interesting, but because of how late they were introduced, they kind of like falter, and it's unfortunate. But.
Yeah, that would be a PC Gamer did a really big interview with a bunch of RPG developers and writers a couple like last week. I wonder if they talked about that, because I was planning on reading it, didn't read about it. Anyway,
and then I started up Jedi Fallen Order, or not Survivor. Jedi Survivor.
Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Bunch of words.
I forgot how far I got in the first game. I know I was on Kashyyyk the second time.
That sounds right. You go there twice, I think, for the story.
Yeah, it was the second time I was there, I think. And although I didn't hate it, there are things about it that it didn't really grab me, and I didn't feel like proceeding. I think I'm about 2 hours into Survivor, and I'm already captured by the game.
Awesome.
I think that it feels better to play, although it also feels a bit arcadey. Cal moves very quickly. Like when I press left or right, he's like zooming left
like
and
from
right.
software almost. Or it's like
no, yeah, I'd say even faster.
Wow,
So
okay,
like,
geez.
yeah, like, or Red Dead has that like real like laggy type of like heavy movement. He's just like, if I press left, he's already halfway. Like,
geez,
like,
okay.
Woo. So, I decided to play. I think it's because of my apprehension from the first game, but I just like, I'm just gonna do story mode, like just. No difficulty I don't really and it's also partially because I want to get through the game, not like rush it or anything, but get through the game, no hassle. That way I can move on to the next thing. We've talked about this plenty of times before. And honestly, I kind of feel like it's more of a Jedi experience than anything else, because the stormtrooper should not take several hits from a lightsaber in order to,
Yeah, it's one of the problems with Star Wars.
Yeah. And so, on story mode, since it's mostly focused on the story, it's just like they being taken down in a hit or two, which is fine. And there's even body parts now. There's like, there's
Was that not
I'm
in
not
the other one?
I don't remember it being in the other one.
I know there are Star Wars games where that happens.
There is,
maybe Academy,
yes.
maybe Jedi Academy. I don't know.
I'm not going to call it gore because it's not gore, but there's
it's PG gore.
Yeah, arms are being lobbed off, legs are being lobbed off and stuff. I like Cal this time around. He seems more angry.
Interesting. Okay.
More angry at the situation at hand with the Empire and what's going on. And so that kind of feeds so far into his not only fighting style, but how he acts with certain villains.
Oh, interesting.
I did encounter, I'm not going to spoil it, I did encounter the first boss, and it's a character from the first game. And you kind of end it pretty, I'm not going to say violently, but it was just like, oh, wow. Like you kind of just did that. Cool.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of neat. And that's not to say I'm very weird with Star Wars. I like Star Wars. I like a lot of things they do. I think that they pigeonhole themselves into like the pseudo religion of Jedi and Sith, and like I'm always very much a rules can be bent, whatever. I'm more like a Qui-Gon person than I am,
a KOTOR.
So it is very like Cal this time around seems very hardened by his experiences.
Yeah, a gray Jedi, as KOTOR would say.
Right. Yes, and now he's kind of, I got to do what I got to do to save everyone. It doesn't matter like what happens. You have new abilities. I believe there's wall jumping in this. You played Mega Man recently, so you know the wall jump mechanic. You do that in this game.
That was in the first one.
Was it in the first one?
There was wall running. I don't know.
There's wall running in this one too.
Like, do you hang on to the wall?
No.
Like Titanfall-esque?
No. You have to. When they first showed it off, I wasn't exactly sure what they wanted me to do, but when I realized it, I was like, this is really awkward. So you are, as you would, Mega Man does, like, up.
Oh,
like,
weird. Okay.
On the wall.
Respawn loves their parkour stuff.
But you are flat on the wall, jumping out and then back in, jumping out, back in. But when you're looking at it from a head-on perspective, it's very awkward looking in the 3D realm space, because that's kind of an ability that you would use in like a side-scroller game.
Sure.
And it doesn't look awkward there, but it looks awkward here. I love BD1. BD's a great droid. There's lots more stuff to find that I've encountered so far. The game is gorgeous. The game actually looks really good.
Are you playing on PS5?
I am playing PS5, yes. And I don't have much else to say. I'm headed towards the first planet right now. I just got past the introductory sequence, which was very cool, and it captured my attention. And I'm excited to get to more of the game. And you already have all of your abilities at the start, which is great. So you already have Force Push, which works better than the first game, in my opinion. But once again, I didn't get too far. So
yeah, I did finish Jedi, the first one.
Yes.
The first Cal game. Cal Kestis 1. Star Wars Cal Kestis 1.
Jedi Fallen Order.
Yeah, that one. I finished that one. I remember liking it. I wasn't a huge fan of the Souls-like formula because I just didn't think it fit. I thought it was strange. And that's the problem with being a Jedi, is it's like, I don't know, in my mind, would Obi-Wan go around and just mindlessly kill a bunch of animals?
Right, exactly. That was the problem I had as well. Even
someone like Qui-Gon or Mace Windu, who are known to be more aggressive, you'd think they would try and find a way around.
I'm not.
So that's the thing. But again, Cal's not like classically trained.
Sure.
Because, so.
And that is something because he was only trained as a younger, Padawan, and then did not have the rest of the training, and now picked it up again. So he is. So it makes more sense. But I don't believe they have much of a Dark Souls inspiration this time around. You still have the meditation spots, which your upgrade paths look really cool the way that they did it.
Oh, awesome.
They're the like Jedi slabs. They're like,
oh, neat.
They're like a bunch of slabs that like pop up and then they like fold out, and then you choose what you want. And I have not noticed that when I meditate, enemies come back. Like, I haven't noticed that.
Oh, okay.
But the the fighting is a lot more hack and like I understand I'm playing on story mode still, but it's a lot more like I don't really have to think about dodging, blocking, whatnot. I can kind of just go at it and it's okay. You do get different stances as well. So you have a singular lightsaber stance, and then you can do your dual blade, and then you could do separate dual blade. I don't know if you get any more, but so far I like it a lot. It's captured me way quicker than the first game has.
Awesome.
Wow. And Saw Gerrera is still alive. I mean, because things haven't happened yet.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay, I was trying to remember Forrest Whitaker. I was trying to remember who Saw Gerrera was. Okay, I remember.
But yeah, I've been playing those.
So, let's see. I've playing more Pillars 2. That's basically the only thing I've been playing. I went back to Signalis. I was going to try and beat Signalis. And Signalis, I kind of hit the same wall that I hit with Hi-Fi Rush, where it's just like, I just don't want to do this.
Sure, yeah.
So I'm going to spoil something about Signalis. It's a minor spoiler. Signalis is Silent Hill. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's a good game. It's got great art direction and all that stuff, but it's structured. It's literally Silent Hill. A save point is in a safe room. There's a box where you can store all your stuff. There's a computer. The computer screen is red. When you click on to save, the screen flashes red. Your save files come up, just like in just like in Silent Hill 2. So it's very Silent Hill. It's clearly inspired, clearly modeled after it. But you only have 6 inventory slots. Weapons, it's the weapon itself, and then ammo. So if you have any extra ammo, that ammo takes up an inventory slot. And then everything goes there. And I got to the like ending area. I think is like the last stretch of the game, and there was a stretch before this where it was a lot of like obtuse puzzles. I'm fine with, but it's like, if what I'm doing before that is 2 hours of find the key to open this door and then find the key to open the next door, I have a lot less patience for the obtuse puzzles because I have lost my taste for like the ambience and stuff. And there's a really huge chunk of Signalis. There's literally a thing where you find a key to a safe deposit box. You go to that safe deposit box, open it up, and there's a card key in there to another door. It's like, okay, now I don't know if that's supposed to be metaphor or if there's reasons that you're finding all these different keys for things, but it's just like it's just not fun. It's not scary. It's not. I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan, so I got to like an ending part, and there was more locked doors, and I was like, I'm gonna have to find more keys, and I just hit that wall where it's like, you know what? I'm not gonna do this. So I launched Pillars 2, but Pillars 2 is going good. I'm enjoying it. I don't know if I enjoy it as much as the first one, but I still feel like I haven't really scratched the surface, which is weird because I'm like 20 hours in. Pillars 2 is structured differently because you have your pirate ship. The game takes place in an archipelago, right? So there's all these islands. You can upgrade your ship. You hire sailors that work on your ship, but the sailors are not part of your party.
Okay.
And your party don't get ship jobs. So on the ship, there's like cannoneers, deckhands, a surgeon, a cook, and you have to hire all those people.
Got it.
You control your ship by clicking on like an overmap. Not overmap?
Overworld?
Overworld, thank you. And you go around and other ships can attack you, and there's a ship-to-ship combat mini game, which has only happened to me once. And it was kind of weird. It feels like a rock, paper, scissors type thing where you can move your ship or swing it in a certain direction, and then you have to choose when to fire. But like certain movements will make you a harder target or decrease your accuracy. Okay. So if that makes sense, it's kind of like rock, paper, scissors, where it's like if your opponent does this and you do this, then they may do something to put them in a better position to shoot. So you may want to keep moving or something like that. I did it once, and I was getting shot to bits, and I was like, screw it, I'm just going to ram them. And I rammed them, and it turned into the ships were next to one another. It turned into normal combat, and that's how I won. So I was like, okay, that was easy. Maybe I'll just ram all the enemies I find. So it's like I need to dig into that more.
There's a reason that was a tactic for so long throughout history.
Yeah. I have I've met like all the main quote-unquote characters who are all cool. 2 of them are from the previous game, which, by the way, it's not Troy Baker who plays and his name is escaping me again. It's Matt
You lied
Mercer.
to me. Oh,
I know. Sorry.
Mercer.
But they sound really. The voice that he does. For,
Yes, they
The other
frequently
voice actor,
get
handsome man.
they frequently get confused for each other.
Yeah, it was really similar. There's a new character, Seraphin, who is I forget his race. It's kind of like a cross between like a hobbit and like a furry creature, like a hobbit and a squirrel.
Oh,
But like a hobbit's height. But he has a really deep, he's like a pirate, and he has a really deep, raspy, like British, "Oi, Captain," like that kind of thing. And he's neat. He's a swashbuckler. He's a bit of a Han Solo type, but he dislikes racism and stuff. Each of the characters in the game, they have dispositions, things that they like or dislike. So a character may dislike dishonesty. A character may like diplomacy. A character may like brashness. Maybe they like that you take risks. Another character likes sort of calm and like approaching things in a measured way.
right.
So that's how they characterize these different characters. And Seraphin is cool because he's sort of this Han Solo type character, but he has this moral underpinning because he's against racism. That has affected him because he's this like other race besides humans and stuff. So that's interesting. The story is really cool thus far. It's interesting because so in the Pillars world, there was a god that everybody thinks died. But this god reawoke in the statue I talked about last week, and the statue's walking across the ocean. You have to follow it and figure out what's going on. And the other gods actually talk with you. And as far as I know, when they talk with you, it's the first time in the series when the gods, all of them at once, straight up just talk with you. In the previous games, there were moments where each god would talk with you, but in this one, they come to you in your sleep, and you like awaken in this like astral plane, and they're standing around you, and they're all talking, and it's a really, really cool scene. But they're all concerned about this. Aethys is the god that they thought died, but isn't reincarnated, and they're not sure what's happening.
Okay.
So it's very much Greek Roman mythology, where all the gods have their own things they want to do. They don't like each other, but they're especially suspicious of what Aethys is doing because they don't like that Aethys supposedly died, but then came back. And they're sort of tasking you with figuring out what to do in the mortal realm because you're their disciple that they chose, not disciple. You're their whatever conduit into the material world, I guess. But so it's interesting. The combat, I had an aha moment. So in Pillars combat, in the first game, like a lot of RPGs, you could only use magic so much before you needed to rest. So like level 1 spells, you could use 2 of them. Once you used 2, you had to rest to get your spells back, right? D&D, whatever.
Yeah.
In this one, it's per combat. So per encounter. So you don't have to rest in between combat as much, which makes combat a little easier. But at the same time, you only have 5 people, so you don't have as many 5 party members. So you don't have like as diverse of a selection of abilities to choose from between all your different characters. And the combat is still difficult. Like you really have to remember to use your buff spells and stuff like that. But one thing that I figured out, and I had an aha moment, there's a thing I forget what it's called. It's essentially an inspiration point. You can click on it and click on a spell, and it overpowers that one spell. Or you can click on it and click on the character, and it regenerates your character's spells. So you can only use it once per combat.
Okay.
And then once you use it like 3 times, you have to rest to get back. So that's cool because you can. So if like my level 3 spells from my main character, I can only use once. And there's a couple really useful ones. So I can use a level 3 spell, spend that inspiration, and then get another level 3 spell. And I was having trouble with the combat, and I had that aha moment. I was like, oh, duh. I half read the description of what I was supposed to do, and so I was like, let me fully read this description. Oh, that's useful. And I went back in. So having fun with it. Writing's really good. Story's really interesting. So yeah, I will have more to report. But man, I love these types of games so much. It's just dungeon crawling and going through all your spells and The combat feels really well balanced, where it's like you get your ass kicked. So it's like, okay, I'll try this and I'll approach it this way. And then I kick the enemy's asses, even though so it's like really well balanced, and how you approach combat matters and stuff like that. So yeah, it's really good, and I'm really enjoying it. And there isn't a game coming out this week, so you can just play Star Wars, and I'll play Pillars 2, and Connor, you'll play Bannerlord, and we won't have to do anything with Nintendo at all. Do you want to do your store story now, or do you want to do it later? We'll save it for later.
I can get mad right now.
Okay, go ahead.
It's a Richard.
I'll look through it. I'll tell you what I give you. That's how this works.
Store story.
All right. So, all right. In the world of like used video games, or in the world of video games, there's a phrase that collectors and folks who are buying accessories for their games use, and that's OEM.
I've heard this before.
I forgot what exactly stands for, but it's basically original manufacturer.
Okay.
Hey, do you have a PSP AC adapter? Like an OEM one, like from Sony themselves, like an actual, not a third party one, actual Sony. So I do get a lot of specific people like who are like, hey, do you have this particular one? And I'll oblige, because yeah, sure. If you want that one specifically, I'll give you this one. However, there are things, because gaming's been around so long, and for this instance, like let's say the PSP, there are things that they do not make anymore.
Sure.
OEM, and they only go away, particularly batteries for the PSP. So I had a guy come in, and he was like, hey, do you guys have any PSP batteries? Me and my coworker, oh yeah, we got tons of them. Like, oh, which one do you need for which version? 1000, 2000, 3000. He's like, just need one for the 2000, specifically OEM battery. And we both were like, oh, you're not going to find one, man. Because even if you did, 15 plus years later, that thing is dead.
The
like
cells
that
are
thing's
dead.
is gone. And he goes, God. And you could tell he gets kind of like miffed that we're just like, pretty much like, no, like, sorry, man. That he's just like, oh, well, I mean, you could just get an OEM one and then like open it up and then replace the battery in the inside. And immediately I was like, then it's not OEM still, because you got to order the battery from China and put it in there. Where are you going to get a battery from? It's the same, like, so I just got, me and my coworker both got really upset, because I understand it's pedantic, but it's just like, you want an original battery, but yet you're going to open that battery to replace it with a battery you're just going to order third party from China. It's the same goddamn thing. So he got really mad at us, because we brought that to his attention, and he just kind of
He
like
got more
shut up.
mad at his own stupidity.
Yeah, it's probably that.
Yeah.
But it is
No, it's just projected towards you guys.
right for sure. But yeah, I mean that's my story. That's all I got.
That's a good one. No, I appreciated that one.
Yeah.
You run Quark's bar from DS9, but it's like if Odo had to run the bar.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the only person in the world that knows that, except for all the other DS9 fans.
There's a lot of things that people don't like know, just because they don't play games all the time, so they just don't know it. But it's for Nintendo 64. It's I turn on my 64 and it doesn't work. Like nothing shows up. It's like, well, no, nothing did show up. Like there wasn't, like, because PlayStation had like the splash screen to open. And it's like, well, 64 didn't have any. There was no. It was just black. It was just a black screen.
Yep.
So, but people, for some reason, remember that something always showed up. It's like, no. So
what's that called? The Mandela effect?
Oh yeah,
It's like emplacing memories. Or
yeah,
whatever.
China screwed up a lot of things too. Because like we had somebody come in because they were calling asking for the Super Nintendo Classic, the little small one.
Sure.
And they come in and they're like, "This has all the games on it, right? Like 2,000 of them." We're like, "No." Because all the ones on Amazon, all the ones on eBay are from China. They all have the 2,000.
Yeah.
They know it just
all
has
the emulated.
just has the 22 games, but this has all the games that we want to play, right? I'm like, yeah. Like you specifically, any game, like whatever game is going to come out of your mouth, it's on there because it's only going to be Mario, Donkey Kong. Like it's so, but they didn't want it because it didn't have 2,000 games on it, so they just left. And I was like, all right.
Listen, I write the books. You come in here. You're fired.
Yeah, you're fired.
Listen up, Matt Dog.
Hi, Doug.
Hit the ad. Thanks for listening. If you like our content, please consider subscribing or leaving a like and comment. You can find us at patreon.com/thegamingdiscourse. And our tiers are $2, $4, $7, and $10 and include getting your name in the video credits, early access, and access to our Discord server.
Really? In front of my espresso?
Yeah, in front of your espresso.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about this Phil Spencer interview.
Spency boy.
Yeah, Spency Boy went off on a bit of a
Xbox.
rant, which was fine because, and we talked about this before the show. I think of all video game executives, he's probably the most sincere. And if he's not, he's the best actor I've ever seen. So
Agreed.
It's one of those two things. But like, I don't believe for a second anything that comes out of like Jim Ryan or Bobby Kotick's mouth. All companies should go straight to jail. Phil Spencer, however, I feel is the most sincere. He has a tech background.
Yeah.
So he sort of knows the ins and outs of how like bits work and stuff like that. I don't know.
Who knows the difference between bits and bytes?
He went on the Kind of Funny Xcast. They talked about the CMA's merger, or the CMA's blocking of the Activision-Blizzard Microsoft merger. He talked about Redfall's poor release. We're going to play a 3-minute clip. I tried to trim it down as much as I could, but he hits a lot of really important points back to back to back and sort of weaves them in and out. So bear with us. We're just going to play a chunk of audio for 3 minutes, and then we will get into discussing and going through a lot of what he says. So go ahead and hit it, Connor.
I will say we have a different vision. It's play the games you want with the people you want anywhere you want. We want Xbox to be something that people who buy our console can feel like they're a member of. Obviously, who are playing on PC, who are playing on cloud, that they feel like they're full members of our ecosystem. Game Pass players can play on many different devices, and we remain fully committed to that. We're not in the business of out-consoling Sony or out-consoling Nintendo. There isn't really a great solution or win for us. And I know that will upset a ton of people, but it's just the truth of the matter is that when you're third place in the console marketplace and the top two players are as strong as they are and have, in certain cases, very, very discrete focus on doing deals and other things that will that kind of make being Xbox hard for us as a team. That's on us, not on anybody else. Our vision is that everybody who's on console has to feel like they have a great experience and they're a first-class citizen. They've invested a ton in our platform. But we are not in a position, and I see it out there. I see commentary that if you just build great games, everything would turn around. It's just not true that if we go off and build great games, all of a sudden you're going to see console share shift in some dramatic way. We lost the worst generation to lose in the Xbox One generation, where everybody built their digital library of games. So when you go and you're building on Xbox, we want our Xbox community to feel awesome. But this idea that if we just focused more on great games on our console, that somehow we're going to win the console race, I think doesn't really lay into the reality of most people. Like 90% of the people every year who walk into a retailer to buy a console are already a member of one of the three ecosystems, and their digital library is there. This is the first generation where the big games that they're playing were games that were available last gen. When you think about Fortnite and Roblox and Minecraft, like the continuity from generation to generation is so strong. I see a lot of pundits out there that kind of want to go back to the time where we all had cartridges and discs and every new generation was a clean slate and you could switch the whole console share. That's just not the world that we are in today. There is no world where Starfield's an 11 out of 10 and people start selling their PS5s. That's not going to happen. And we have this unique vision because we see what creators want to do. Creators want to build games that can meet players on any screen. People play with their friends regardless of what other screen they're on. And the console is the core of the Xbox brand. There's no doubt. So like we will stay focused on making sure that console experience is awesome. But I know some people want to hold us up of just being a better green version of what the blue guys do. And I'm just going to say, like, there's not a win for Xbox in staying in the wake of somebody else. We have to go off and do our own thing with Game Pass, with the stuff we do with xCloud, and the way we build our games.
All right, so there's a lot there. There's a lot of different ideas. Mm-hmm. Do we have something we want to say off the top of our heads before we start breaking down? Because I think I think there's a lot of interesting stuff here. So off the top of our heads, first thing we want to discuss.
At the end, he said Game Bass and not Game Pass. I'm kidding.
All right, so he should be fired.
Also, I don't think even if Starfield was a 20 out of 10, people would be selling their PS5s strictly because of how difficult it was to get a PS5.
Yeah. Okay, so I think a lot of in this quote is not new. Because this has been Xbox's message and Phil Spencer's message for a really long time.
For a long while.
And we've talked about the Xbox ecosystem as sort of or the Xbox shifting its focus from a plastic box to an ecosystem for years now, right? And it began with Xbox Game Pass, right? That was the first big push. They were going to put their first party IPs on there. They were bringing more games to the PC. You weren't going to have as many like console exclusives. And that goes all the way back to the E3 press conference back in 2018, 2019. Exclusive, right? If you remember that. So none of this is necessarily new. There is a heightened sense of awareness due to Redfall and due to Xbox not having a really big hit. Xbox has had games that are like exclusive to the Xbox ecosystem. Scorn is one. I'm trying to think of like other smaller games that are on
Grounded.
Game Pass. Redfall, Grounded, stuff like that aren't like on the PlayStation. But in terms of like when you think of a PlayStation game or a Nintendo game, Breath of the Wild, Bloodborne, shit like that, Xbox hasn't really had that. And the games that they have had, like Redfall or Halo Infinite, have been really, really big. Well, Redfall's been bad. Halo Infinite, I think, was a failure on multiple fronts.
Yes.
So all that, I think, connects. So on one hand, nothing is new here. On the other hand, the bluntness with which he is saying it has somewhat increased, because Xbox's aim has not been for a long time to outsell Sony. Now, I think it's important to point out the historical context here, because I think Xbox could have won the previous generation. But they decided to do something weird with the Xbox One and try to make
launch,
it this one media entertainment thing, which in some ways I think people would argue it was ahead of its time. In other ways, so much of the TV stuff you can do on an Xbox, you have smart TVs now. Well, you have something you plug into the HDMI port on your TV, and it has all that. You don't need the expensive console for all those TV features.
That's what was weird, because at some point, the early 2000s, the introduction of the PS2, that's when video games started to force technology, if that makes sense. PS2 helped drive DVDs.
Yes.
And then, of course, the PS3 helped drive Blu-rays during the HD DVD Blu-ray thing. I think that Xbox felt that they wanted to get the jump on, or whoever was running at the time, Don Matrick and Phil Harrison.
And obviously, these companies aren't monoliths. The decisions are being made multiple people.
Yes. Sure. I think they wanted to get the jump on something which was the media center, the Netflix, Disney Plus wasn't around at the time. You get all the apps and everything. That they didn't realize that stuff was going to happen naturally. They didn't need a console to force that. And it was something that your console could just have, not necessarily as an afterthought, but just as a separate feature.
Sure.
And not necessarily the thing that you needed to build your console around. And yeah, they definitely faltered with that, because at this point, we're no longer really forcing anything through our video games, aside from maybe 4K.
Oh, okay. You mean forcing technology?
Technology is what I mean.
This generation, I can't think of one off the top of my head. No. But yeah, so I think they could have won the Xbox One generation had they decided to do something differently. So you can't, obviously, what can they do about that now? Nothing. Don Matrick's gone. We make fun of Don Matrick for saying...
and Phil Harrison, don't forget him.
We make fun of them for the line, buy an Xbox 360 or whatever, but Phil Spencer said that too. I can find the quote. He was speaking to Stephen Totillo of Kotaku.
Do it right now.
It'll take me 5 minutes. It'll be bad audio. I'll post the link in the description. But that was a company line, right? It's not like Phil Spencer did not come out and say it on his own or anything. That was a company line that everybody was saying. And they failed. And so we're now at the consequences of my actions part, but the consequences have been so spectacularly grand because PlayStation, he's correct, PlayStation picked up so much momentum.
They did.
Between being the better selling console at the beginning of the generation. Was it that or the PS3 that outsold the Xbox?
The PS3 eventually sold the
Okay.
But
I'm pretty sure the PS4 outsold the Xbox
yes, it
One
did. Yes,
family,
it did.
like even over its lifetime.
Yeah.
But they picked up momentum through one, just winning that outright console sales, whatever. But they also had year in and year out big titles that were big from Horizon Zero and new IPs too.
Knack 2,
Horizon
baby.
Zero Dawn, Ghost of Tsushima.
Yep. No, you already said Horizon.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Of course, Last of Us.
Last of Us was sort of
Spider-Man.
was at the tail end of the PS3. Then you had Spider-Man. So you had a bunch of like new IPs in the past 10 years for PlayStation. Xbox isn't necessarily the same, and I think their biggest successes have been things that they have brought in, like Minecraft. This is going into the other thing. I slightly disagree with Phil Spencer, which I know what that sounds like, because I think quality of content is super important. Now, he's not saying it's not important. He's speaking in the context of selling consoles, because I think there are a lot of people out there, especially people who are really dug into like the console wars for whatever reason.
It'll always be around.
That one console is it's like sports teams. You know, I'm a fan of the New York Giants.
It's baseline human tribalism is what it is.
Well, then it's like college football, all right? And don't you get me started on college football. I am a fan of the Oklahoma Sooners, but I understand that my fanhood of the Oklahoma Sooners is pure ambiguity. There's no substance behind it, right? Besides the fact that Texas is the source of all evil in the world. Sure. But the point I'm trying to make here is like what he was talking about was within the context of selling consoles, which I supposed everyone understood this, that the Xbox One or the Xbox Series S and X are not sort of the big selling points of the Xbox ecosystem. It's a part of it, but it's not. It's this ecosystem that is the big selling point, and they had to pivot to that because PlayStation overtook them by so much.
Yep.
Now Nintendo exists in their own world because the Wii U did not do great, and then they hit a gold mine with the Switch, and they hit another gold mine with Breath of the Wild, with Mario Odyssey, and with
Mario Kart 8,
Mario
Animal
Kart
Crossing,
8, which Mario Kart 8 was a
port.
Was a port from the Wii U. So how has Nintendo won or succeeded? Games, quality of content, and they figured out how to market a console. Yeah. So good on them. After the Wii was sort of marketed with motion controls and stuff like that. But I think when we look back on the Wii, we don't think games as much as we think motion controls.
Yes.
Where when we look back on the Switch, I think we're going to think about third-party support and we're going to think about games. Look back on the PS4, you're going to think about games. Look back on the Xbox One, it's still going to be TV, right? That's going to be the thing.
Oh, yeah.
So I think quality of content is important, and I think that can move people into your ecosystem. So he didn't really specify.
Yeah.
But I think that's the most important thing. And we'll talk about Meta in a bit and their trouble with the Quest headsets. But I think there's a similar problem there. It's just quality of content, right? What are you like? If you're in the business of games, you have to make games. And if you don't do that, it doesn't matter if your console can output 12K, right? It just doesn't matter. If that's the business that you're in. So a lot of fascinating stuff. A lot of stuff that we've known before, but I still get back to you got to make good games. And I think you could point I think this brings up questions about like 343 and Halo, because Halo Infinite could have been like a God of War reboot type thing, right? Or 2018 God of War was a reimagining of the series in a lot of different ways. And I think Halo Infinite should have been that, but they tried this other route where the single player tried to clean up Halo 5. It did a Rise of Skywalker where it tried to clean up the previous game, but it also took the previous game seriously and instead of just retconning it entirely. And then the multiplayer was free to play, and hinged on a big opening week to continue success. And now we're at this point where, according to Steam charts, it's not very popular. It gets underneath like 4,000 people.
Yeah.
Which Squad outpaces that, I think. Maybe not. I'm pretty sure it does. So again, with quality of content, it's like the question I would ask Spencer is, where was the decision making behind Halo Infinite? Because I think Halo Infinite, you had a potential gold mine,
You did. You could have created
just caved it in.
Right, yeah. You could have created your own singular live service that only you had. And it'd be massively successful for them for the coming years, but they forgot the content. So
And I think if Halo Infinite were better, Xbox would be in a different...
they'd be in a more solid position, I would say. I don't even think they're in a...
No, I don't
they're
think
in a faltering position. I don't think they're in a bad position at all. But I do agree with Spencer that that they won't catch up to. It's going to be very hard if they do catch up to PS5, because they are going to have to output the same amount of quality and games that PS5 is doing. Because even this year, despite what you want to say about some of the releases, we already have several major titles coming this year for PS5, and that's possibly Spider-Man at the end of the year. We have Final Fantasy 16 next month. And then a couple months ago, once again, despite how you feel about it, we had Forspoken, which, you know, is an exclusive. It's fine, but
console exclusive.
Yeah, but it was something that people kept their eyes on, at least for a moment or two.
Exclusive?
Yes, it's on PC, I think, as well, but
Okay, I just didn't remember.
but I mean, you know.
Sure. Yeah. But that's the thing is PlayStation can take that sort of... The narrative about PlayStation is not, oh man, Forspoken's bad, what are they going to do?
Right.
The narrative is, oh, Forspoken was bad, who cares?
Yeah.
Horizon Forbidden West was amazing, the DLC
Burning
just
Shores,
came out, blah, blah,
Burning
blah, blah,
Shores,
blah, right? So so it goes back to quality of content. I'm a big believer in that. I think that's what matters most. And they didn't do that with the Xbox One, and now they're suffering the and we've said that before on this show too. We've said how horribly bad the Xbox One generation reverberated, and that Xbox had to do an entire pivot to work. And now with PlayStation moving games to PC, I think that's going to be even more difficult, because you have a whole nother market that PlayStation broke into and is being successful with right now.
Yes.
They had a bad port with The Last of Us, but I mean, other than that, God of War, Days Gone have sold tons.
Yes.
Right? Have sold tons on the PC and been really successful. So, and the Uncharted games, I think, were pretty good too.
The Uncharted came out with that.
Correct?
They released Lost Legacy, or not Lost, the dual pack, Lost Legacy and Uncharted 4.
One of the Uncharted
very weird decision,
versions
but yeah,
released on PC. But yeah, I think and yeah, the bulk, again, I'm going to say this for the third time. The bulk of this is stuff that we've already known. Like, yeah, they're not trying to outsell. They're not trying to out-console Sony, and that makes sense. And they haven't been trying to do that for a long time.
for a very long time. Yes,
And they shouldn't, because they don't have the titles. But I think if they pick up the titles, this becomes a very different conversation.
yeah.
Now, the thing about being third in market share, listen, again, I love Phil Spencer, but that's a bit of a company line, because it's like, come on, man, you're Microsoft. I understand you're third in market share, but your parent is Microsoft, as opposed to PlayStation's parent, which is Sony, which is nowhere near the same level of power.
I think that Microsoft, the Xbox brand, has cemented itself for long enough that it's something that Microsoft will keep going despite any failures in the future. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't think they're just going to be like, Xbox is no more.
I wasn't going to speculate that.
Uh-huh.
I know there are probably people that would, and maybe considering the history of consoles, that may not necessarily be a crazy. The things that are true now aren't always going to be true. So
Of course.
So I mean, at one point, people were like, "No way, Sega's going to die out," and here we are, 20 years later, and Sega does not have a console. So, but yeah, but again, like Microsoft's weight is different from Sony's weight. So if one of those companies can throw around weight to get themselves back into a better position,
Right.
it's going to be Microsoft, I would think. But yeah, with the Activision-Blizzard thing, that did not hurt Xbox because of Call of Duty. That hurt Xbox because of King, because that was the thing that they wanted the most, in my opinion. because King owns Candy Crush, and Candy Crush, for whatever reason, people just, as soon as they get their check in the bank, they just move it straight to Candy Crush.
Moms and grandmas.
Yeah. So, that's the thing that they wanted with the Activision-Blizzard merger. They're gonna appeal it, and we'll see. Call of Duty is nice and it's powerful, but it's not the thing that they really, really wanted. And that's their bigger disappointment. And Sony and Nintendo, and Phil Spencer has said this too in an interview with The Verge last year. We talked about this, talking about how it's difficult to make a global brand if you don't have like a foot in the mobile market, right? But does like Sony have a foot in the mobile market? PlayStation?
No.
Not really. Nintendo has explicitly said that they see it more as like a promotional thing than an actual like development sector for their company. So Microsoft keeps talking about how they're third in market share, which is true, but I also think it's not like they're third as in they're running on Steam.
Yeah.
And the other two companies above them don't have the thing that they wanted the most, which was a foot in the mobile market, right? So yeah, I think that's all. Whoops, I think that's all that I.
I mean, there's a lot to go over, but it is stuff that we have tackled piece by piece throughout the last like half year.
Yes.
So I don't think there's anything new here aside for the fact that we can talk about how, as I mentioned before the podcast, like Spencer is the only, out of all three, is the only person who will go on to a podcast and vent the troubles of the company that they have at the moment.
Yes, I think he's the most blunt.
I can't tell you the last time I've seen Doug Bowser. Like he did one video right when he was, made president for Nintendo Direct. Never seen the guy again.
Yeah.
Never seen the guy again.
And honestly, I think the other executive may be Layden, who is no longer obviously at PlayStation.
Yeah.
I think maybe because Layden
is very vocal. He's vocal.
very opinionated.
Yeah.
And he even talked a couple months ago. He talked about the development budgets and stuff in the games industry and how it's unsustainable and whatnot. So,
Right.
So he may have been, and I guess Fils-Aimé too. I don't know.
Fils-Aimé was somewhat vocal. He still kept the.
Okay. Yeah. And Spencer is a company man. Towing the company lines, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're third in market share. That's a company line that there is truth to, but I think what he's trying to get across is that like, oh, poor Xbox, but I don't necessarily buy that narrative.
Right.
And he's putting it out there because they're appealing a decision to buy another company, right? Which is a deal I don't want to go through because it's just never good when big companies buy smaller but still massive companies. Okay, do we want to? Yeah, go ahead, Connor.
Just to fact check you, Halo Infinite last 30 days averaged 3,000 players.
Okay, what was Squad?
9,000.
There you go. Look at that. Can you
Nice.
believe that? Squad.
Squad's 24-hour peak 13,000. Halo's 24-hour peak 4,500.
Squad, the game where people join and just drive trucks and get shot at.
No.
Listen, it's a hard job, but someone's got to do it.
And that's the game that more people are playing than Halo Infinite, and that's crazy to me. Okay, we won't talk. And it's Steam charts, so it's not totally accurate. Whatever. Steam charts is unofficial, but we're gonna move on. Activision-Blizzard and Riot have settled. We've talked about each settlement in the past, but Axios is reporting more specifics. This is going back to the story Cecilia D'Anastasio wrote about Riot years and years ago. That was one of the first things we talked about when we started the podcast. And for Activision-Blizzard, this is the Equal Employment and Opportunity Commission's lawsuit back in 2021, which is separate from the lawsuit. That's a different organization from the California Department of Fair and Equal and Fair Housing or whatever it is. So two different lawsuits here. But anyway, Riot settled to pay $100 million for discrimination claims and will pay 1,548 women who were staffers or contractors at the company. Initial payments will be between $2,500 and $5,000 for women who worked at the company, with additional payments up to $40,000 depending on status and tenure. Activision-Blizzard had the $18 million settlement. This is all USD. Activision-Blizzard is making payments from 5 to 6 figures to hundreds of people who opted in. Most of the money has been distributed to claimants, while the rest will go to Reboot Representation, which is a coalition that aims to increase the number of Black, Latina, and Native American women in technology. Both Activision-Blizzard and Riot are a part of the coalition. Kind of weird to wonder, well, I guess legally it's ending.
Right.
Efforts to make the industry better aren't ending, but it's still weird to think that, to see the whole arc, I guess.
Yeah.
From like literally the day the story dropped, and then we had all these other stories, Ubisoft, Activision, Blizzard, and it's like, well, what's justice?
Right.
And we're here, and it's like, is this it? Is this how?
It feels like nothing has happened. Like, I mean, progressive has happened.
Yeah. And I don't know what justice is.
It's blind, I'll tell you that much.
Does money help you with trauma and abuse and stuff? Probably
No.
not getting rid of it. It
Yeah.
probably helps that you don't have to worry about bills as much or something. I don't know. Who knows who's getting this? But yeah, what went down at these companies was ridiculous and horrible. And I think there are some executives. I don't like calling for jobs because it's just weird. I listen to a lot of sports radio, and it always makes me feel kind of dirty when people are like, fire the coach, because it's like, he's trying his best. But when you
Aren't
have,
we all?
yeah, but when you have massive institutional failures, like you had at Activision Blizzard, or like you have at Ubisoft, it's hard not to look at Yves Guillemot or Bobby Kotick and say, yeah, you should keep your job. Because even if you didn't know, then you failed to know huge systemic failures. And if you did know, then you allowed huge systemic failures to continue, which is horrific.
If you didn't know, you're just totally incompetent at your job.
Yeah, exactly. Is there anything we want to discuss before we talk about the Zuck?
No.
No? Okay, moving on.
I'm sorry.
So we're going to discuss a story, a Washington Post story written by Naomi Nix, how Mark Zuckerberg broke Meta's workforce. Why'd you put 56 there?
For my
Timestamp.
notes, timestamps.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Inside baseball. The story alleges Meta employees following the company's struggles with the metaverse and multiple layoffs are losing faith in Zuckerberg, and say he's steering the company into a morale crisis. During the pandemic, Meta used the money coming in to invest in labor and hired 41,000 people. Meta is now in what Zuckerberg calls a year of efficiency, aimed at preparing the company for slower revenue growth caused by rising interest rates and geopolitical instability. Meta has had trouble with retention, specifically with the Quest headsets. I'm going to read straight from the story. Quote, Quest headsets were intended to provide an on-ramp to Meta's virtual reality app, Horizon Worlds, and other third-party apps. Instead, Meta executives found that buyers often use them only for a few weeks, and users who do use the headsets often flock to competing apps such as Rec Room and VR Chat. In quote, Reality Labs Meta's VR division lost 13.7 billion. That just seems made up. How? 13.7. They lost 13.7 billion in 2022, 10.2 billion in 2021, and 6.6 billion in 2020.
Where did it go? How'd you lose it? How'd you lose that much? No, I'm kidding. Yeah, the retention for Quest headsets is very low. I think we talked about it before, but I have a lot of people call me and say, "Hey, do you have Quest heads, or do you take in Quest heads?" And I go, "No, I'm sorry, not that It's a can of worms because you have to have the Facebook account or the Meta account, and then I have to download a game. I have to make sure it works. I'm not going to deal with it, but
not worth the hassle,
right? But there is a the average person is not keen on VR. It's novel and it's great to play with for a little bit, but it's not something that people can consistently interact with for long periods of time. So they kind of just leave it there. And they're not going to go on, put their headset on to browse the store to see what else is new.
No.
They're not going to do that. And so they just go, there's nothing to do on this thing. And then they sell it. I think that it's kind of a not lost cause, a misstep for Facebook to, you're nodding, but I don't know if you know what I'm going to say. Particularly Rec Room and VR Chat. When users put on their headsets, it says right there, when users put on their headsets, they flock to competing apps for Rec Room and VR Chat. They could have invested in those programs to grow social media.
Sure. Which
as
is
a
the
platform.
thing they wanted to do with Horizon Worlds.
Right. But
yeah.
Instead of maybe they tried to force feed us Horizon Worlds, which I don't even recall Horizon Worlds being a thing when I first got the Quest headset.
I don't remember when it came out. I hopped into it. It's like Rec Room.
Yeah.
So I mean, and Rec Room's fine.
Yeah, Rec Room's okay.
I don't necessarily think Rec Room is Roblox.
Yeah, pretty much.
So it's like it's not. So okay, there's a lot here because I am not a fan of how I am a huge fan of VR. I'm a VR apologist. I understand the limitations to VR. I understand VR sickness. I get all that, but I also understand some of the best games I have ever played in my entire life were with a VR headset on. So there is no question, no doubt in my mind that the technology can be used to deliver games that just blow your mind, right? It doesn't mean that every game is a good fit for VR, whatever. There's a whole bunch of caveats there, but VR works, and period, end of discussion. But Meta, what bothers me about Meta is they got this huge market share, and they made a cheap headset, it's a nice headset. It's not a horrible headset. But they made a cheap headset because they couldn't give it away for free, which Facebook is their primary product, right? And Facebook is a free product where they sell you. They sell ads for you. That's essentially what goes on, right? But you can't give away a headset for free because it's an expensive thing to manufacture. So you have to price it somehow. There has to be an MSRP somehow. So it ended up being low. They bite in this huge market share, but it's toward this goal of metaverse nonsense, which has been amorphous, underwhelming, tied with other things that nobody likes, like cryptocurrency and NFTs. And now we're here where, because the emphasis was not on games, it was on like experiences or watching an NBA basketball game or going to a concert or something like that. It has just lost steam. And this is what I have suspected for years, is that retention with the headsets just isn't good. Because I don't know if you're super into games and you don't have a PC, but you have like a PlayStation, then you're choosing between PSVR and Meta.
Right.
I think that's a decision to make. If you have a PC and you get a headset and then you go play Half-Life Alyx and you're limited by the Quest's hardware, you're like, well, this sucks. And you try out a higher end headset, you may not have as high resolution, but you're going to have way better fidelity and all that stuff. And that matters. The point I'm trying to get to here is they carved out a huge market by having it low cost, but that market was like awkward because I don't know if it was filled with people that were really interested in VR or were like, I'll give this headset a try. It's not as expensive as like a console. And then this is what happened. They played it for a bit, but Mark Zuckerberg wanted it to be a Facebook, something you would log into daily, something that you would socialize on. And the accessibility problems with VR just make that a non-starter. There's all kinds of, people do their hair, people put on makeup, people wear glasses. You can go on and on and on about making a VR headset something that you use on a daily basis and how that causes problems for like Zuckerberg's version of the metaverse. And again, you have tangential things like NFTs and cryptocurrency and shit like that, which nobody wants. So that's what frustrates me about this is VR is still, I think, in its infancy. There are good games that come out every year, but not very many. But I wonder what it does to the technology in general, or if it has held back VR at all. Because if you're a developer and you're making a game, right now the biggest market share is Quest. So you are not incentivized to build an Alex, something that's super high fidelity, super great, super expensive and all that.
Right.
I assume it's expensive, because that's not where the market share is. So games like Onward have had to make Quest versions, which downgrade the graphics so that it works on the Quest, so that they can incorporate this other market, but that other market isn't necessarily a market that's playing all that much. And that's a systemic failure on Meta's fault. And it's because Mark Zuckerberg couldn't just make a fucking headset, put games on it. He had to somehow make, Facebook, whoa, and talk about Arizona Sunshine as if he's ever played a video game in his life, which he hasn't. That's an opinion.
That game is average.
Arizona Sunshine was really impressive when VR first came out.
Sure.
Like flashlights and stuff.
Yeah.
But now it's like funny. But yeah, we're totally past that. And another thing. We talked about that. We're not geniuses, okay?
Mm-hmm.
During the pandemic, when we were doing remote shows, and the narrative during the pandemic was every person on Earth has bought a Switch and 3 games. Jesus Christ, right? And there was truth to that. The video game industry
blossomed,
and it made sense. People were staying at home. You had Animal Crossing and all that. But we all said, this is not going to last. Things are going to revert to the mean. Mm-hmm. People are going to... The number of people that are entering the gaming industry as a consumer and then are going to stagnate and stay is way less than the people that entered it during the pandemic.
Right.
And that's exactly what happened. And short-sighted decisions, like hiring a gajillion people in the middle of the pandemic to keep up with these numbers, and then all of a sudden those numbers drop and you're like, I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
It's like, there's no way people at these companies didn't see that coming or didn't understand that the market was inflated and that it wasn't going to last. I guess if your goal is to create a Facebook in VR, then maybe the mentality is stronger to lead you to that. But that's frustrating too. That's just frustrating because it's just a dumb decision that I think everybody expected to eventually fall off somewhat. But we've complained about that before. So.
Oh yeah, very much so.
I want VR in the hands of a company that
it's competent.
It's competent and believes in VR.
Yeah.
I want I think Sony believes in VR. They're not putting out a $2,000 headset, which is fine, but they're putting out something that I think is substantial, packs a punch.
Finally being carried in stores now.
And it's games. It's about games, right? Mm-hmm. Sony, I think, messes around with like metaverse shit, but I think their most important thing is games.
Yeah.
And trying to figure that out. And that's, I think, with a VR headset, that's the thing that works the best right now. That's the thing that should work. And we know that it does work. So just do that. Don't worry about Decentraland. Nobody wants Decentraland. You can't even wear a VR headset in Decentraland. So you could before. It was a community mod.
I think that Meta's VR market share is a lot weaker than it actually is. I think it has a perceived large market share because of its low entry point. However, there's this thing in the world called the free market. And if you're developing something, for a VR headset, and you have something, a company that has a higher price point, for entry with their headsets, and then on the other side, you have a dumpster fire. Which one are you gonna, eventually build for? Obviously, not the dumpster fire. Right now, they're going into the dumpster fire because it has Meta over it, and the lights are still on. But those lights are starting to flicker and fade out, and it's like the Walgreens that you see on the certain sides of the road where it's like the L is out and like one of the R's or the R and one of the E's are out. It's not really it's Walgreens, but you're not really sure if it's Walgreens. That's where that's headed, because Meta's standing in VR is obviously declining. And so developers, yes, they're going to develop for the Quest, but they're going to start developing, at least I personally believe, start developing for it less because there's less happening there. you don't develop for the Wii U anymore because no one's buying Wii U's. And no one uses the Wii U anymore. Very few people use the Wii U. Very few people are going to be using the Quest for gaming because because there's not a lot to do.
Yeah, I don't think you're crazy that it's somewhat of a false market. But the problem is that it still has that lingering impact of roping in all those people like Downpour Interactive. But
But I think that's going to even out, and it's going to move away from that, and we're going to see less and less about Zuckerberg with Meta.
That's the future that I hope for. I don't want anybody to lose their job, obviously. That is happening at Meta because I think of corporate mismanagement and the Zuck doing Zuck things, and so this is the result. But I hope that's I don't know in the history of consoles if there's like a similar case, but I hope what happens is that the low end sort of peters out, and then we hit a plateau where PlayStation sort of exist as the quote unquote low end. It's not a cheap headset.
Right.
But it would be like as compared to the Index or whatever, it would be sort of the lower end. You have to have a PlayStation 2, so things are a bit different, but that's the feature that I want. We completely forgot to talk about Meta's headset, the Meta Quest Pro, which is like the
Quest 3 is supposedly coming out this year too.
Which is like the $1,500 one or whatever.
It's come down. It had a price drop, so I think it's like $1,099 or $1,100 or something.
Okay. I didn't know about the Quest 3.
Still too much.
Yeah. Okay, are we ready for tidbits?
Yeah.
MetaQuest Pro is currently $1,000.
Okay. Yeah.
That's $700 too much.
It is $1,000 too much.
Yeah.
Here we go.
What if I told you in this world there are bits and there are tids, and Richard is the only man who can put them together into tidbits?
We need to get that video made and then like have like John Woo, like doves like fly out after the two words combined.
Do it like super 80s style, like Total Recall or like Terminator style.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Oh boy. I got some very quick ones here because they're just mostly statements, not necessarily like big stories. But although physical sales were down, the digital data shows that Jedi Survivor actually beat Jedi Fallen Order's launch sales by over 30%. And this is because Survivor's digital accounted for almost double what Fallen Order managed.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
I did not expect that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That came from Chris Dring, the head of Game Industry.
Yeah.
Also, Fallen Order has somewhat of a fail-safe if you skip certain story elements. I don't know if you saw this, but a Twitch streamer today posted up a video. He tried to attempt like a skip on a story part. Like there was a section he's not supposed to get to yet. He attempted a skip to get over there. And he did kind of like a double jump, air dash, and then did this kind of like homing attack on one of the stormtroopers on the other side. And he succeeded, and he was like really stoked about it. And then the game stopped, and a notification popped up on the screen. And it basically said, you seem to have bypassed certain story elements. Continuing to play from this point may encounter issues. If you choose to proceed anyway, loading any future saves from the title screen will give you the option to reload prior to this point. And then it asks if you want to reload from the save point or continue anyways. And so he chose to continue anyways because he is a speedrunner. They don't give a shit about that. Eventually, he did soft lock his game because he needed an ability to get to. Yeah, but because the game already knew that was going to happen, he was able to revert to his last save and whatnot.
That's really cool. Salute some QA tester that caught that. And they put that notification.
Yeah, other games have done that in the past. There's a bunch of examples, but still, it's very cool.
Sorry. Can I do a quick tidbit?
Go ahead.
I think I've talked about this before, but in Saboteur. So Saboteur, the guy, Sean Devlin, he drives race cars. The main bad guy who's a Nazi, he drives race cars. It's very campy. But anyway, at the very beginning of the game, you have to race him.
Yeah.
And there's a cutscene where right before you win, he shoots out your tire. Sean crashes. He wins the race. The game starts in the open world and all that. But if you drive away from the from the racetrack and you take the car, it's called the Aurora, You go upgrade the Aurora, it takes you hours. You unlock the machine guns for it, and then you drive back to the racetrack because you have the open world, and then you kill him in the middle of the race before the cutscene where he kills you. The game just cuts to credits.
No way.
You stop the it's
That's
like
so cool.
It's like Far Cry 5 or whatever, Far Cry 4, where you can
just
sit there and
stay
the
there
game
for 20
ends.
minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll show it to you guys after. But Sean Devlin wins the race, and because he kills the main bad guy, apparently France doesn't get invaded, and
That's so rad.
Yeah,
That's
I
all it
love that
took.
stuff. Yeah.
Killing one.
there's no special
Nazi,
cutscene or anything. It just
race car
cuts
driver.
to cuts to credits. It's just
Yeah.
funny.
So Honkai Star Rail does that too, because at the beginning of the game, the character you meet who takes you on the adventure basically is just like, I'll be waiting by the ship. If you want to join us, please, whatever. And if you go and you choose yes, you go on the adventure. But if you choose no, it's kind of a sad ending, but it's basically like you chose to stay back on the ship. You never became anybody,
Jeez.
and you kind of just became a worker on the ship until one day you received news of the destruction of that train.
Oh
the
my
train
God.
that because you would have been the one to save everyone, but yeah, and it's just somber, and then it rolls credits.
Ugh.
So yeah. Even though the game is really funny and really lighthearted, when you play it, that ending is very whoa.
Yeah, no way. Okay.
Much prefer the Far Cry 4 ending where it just starts going into should I stay or should I go?
Yeah, no, that's
Bit more jaunty.
That is the canonical ending. I don't care. The other endings suck. So,
I mean, realistically, if you were in that situation,
yeah,
you'd hang out.
yeah.
So I think that is the canonical ending.
A bunch of food in front of me, and he just takes you to do what you need to do.
Yeah.
All right. Anyways, during a Sega and Rovio conference, that's weird to say now, by the way, they announced that Sonic Frontiers has sold 3.5 million units. That is 300,000 more since the last updated number. And now word has been received that it has surpassed Sonic Heroes as the best-selling 3D Sonic title.
Do they define units digital and physical?
I believe they do.
Wow.
I don't know that for certain, but Nintendo is the only one who does not reveal digital numbers, and I have no idea why.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll never know because Nintendo sucks.
I don't know how Sega does things off the top of my head. Is that considered?
They do what Nintendo don't.
So, well, that's true. So is that because if this were Square Enix, they'd say we sold 3 million copies.
It's a failure.
It's a failure. We have to burn ourselves at the stake because of this. Is Sega? Are they? Is this?
It sounds like they're. I mean,
It seems like it's a positive result.
It is a positive result. It is the best-selling 3D Sonic title now,
Okay. Cool.
which is surprising considering how many fans are out there.
Yeah.
But there are fans of the character, not necessarily the game. It's a vice versa, whatever.
Yeah.
Last one I got, but according to the general manager of Hunt Showdown, only 40% of players have not killed another player in the game.
40% have not killed.
Another player.
Okay, so
yeah.
40% have never killed a player. Okay, interesting. Yeah,
I think that's kind of impressive. No, I never played it
Showdown?
because I assumed it was like a battle royale game, and it's like a PvPvE.
Kinda. So I haven't played it in years, but it is really, really neat. It's horror. It's like a Louisiana. There's monsters and zombies and the deep south. Just a little Nicky reference there for you. Okay, I'm trying to refocus now. Sorry. Whoa, Chicago kicks ass.
In the name of Lucifer.
I command you to spill the blood of the innocent. Oh man, Chicago kicks ass. The best part of little Nicky is when the devil, played by Harvey Klein, I think is the actor's
Harvey
name. Harvey Keitel, yeah. When Hitler he's in hell and Hitler walks in a maid outfit, and Harvey Keitel, he has him pick a fruit to put up some places things shouldn't go, and he picks out something small, like a relatively small, like a banana or something, and Harvey Keitel picks up the pineapple, and the guy playing Hitler goes, "You're schnilly." Anyway, okay, didn't mean to. God damn it, Connor, you should have put me on a movie reference. You know not to do this. What was I gonna say? I've lost what I was talking about. Oh, so Hunt Showdown.
Yeah.
So Hunt Showdown does this cool thing where when you're near a player, you can hear your heart start to beat or
cool.
some kind of sound. So it signifies that you're near a player.
Right.
And And then as you get distance, that fades away. So what I used to do a lot when I played is when that heartbeat would start, I would sit and I would sort of just wait.
Yeah.
And then eventually it would go away. So it kind of gives you... So I think maybe the reason behind that is, as opposed to like other battle royales, you have this detection thing that's beyond just footsteps.
Or a map.
Well, you can't see, where you can detect enemy players.
Oh, got it.
As like a proximity detection. But I thought Hunt Showdown was really freaking cool because the ambience, the horror is all awesome. But I haven't played it in years. So, But yeah, it is a really cool game. Is that all tidbits?
That's all tidbits that I got.
Don't have any Connor tidbits?
I was gonna say something, but then we went off on the little Nicky tangent, and I slipped my mind.
When it comes to video games, I'll benefit of the doubt. I always give benefit of doubt.
Sure.
And so, of course, all the bad, juju surrounding Redfall, happened. So when we're at work, we always put on a completely random game to play. If there's a game that just came out that none of us really care about, we'll put up the game unless, like I'm not going to put up Zelda because like spoilers and whatnot, whatever. But we would put up Redfall, and several times I looked at the game. I felt nothing like watching the gameplay. I felt nothing. And I watched them fight a boss, and it was so brain dead. He just stood behind like a rock pillar and just kind of boss, same position, same move over and over, and he would have a shotgun and he'd shoot the boss. Numbers would pop up, and I would just kind of be like, those numbers mean nothing to me. Like it's not, the numbers that are right there does not coincide with what's happening with the health bar, and it was just kind of very
that's too bad.
very soulless. Yeah.
And that's one of those things where it's like I feel bad for Arcane Austin.
What happened at Arcane?
Well, it's Arcane Austin, not Arcane Lions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's one thing everybody's like, oh no, Arcane's going to shut down. It's like, no, it's not the same. Arcane Austin did Prey, which was good.
Which,
was still solid. It wasn't like, depending on who you talk to, is either one of the most incredible games ever or just
And
fine.
I think it's a little bit of both, because the space station and everything was cool, but...
But Arcade Lions is the one who did all the Dishonoreds, etc. like that. So yeah, different one.
But I hope they can get back to doing that kind of stuff, because the Arcanes have not released a bad game. I don't know, as far as I can remember. I'm sure there probably has been one before Redfall.
Only bad game has been the ones they've helped with, and that was like Wolfenstein Youngblood.
Oh, okay. But like, I don't remember when the studio started, but I can remember as far back as the first Dishonored, and that was good. Dishonored 2, good reviews. And then Prey was sort of mixed, but there were some things that were incredible about it, other things that weren't as good.
Yep.
But definitely I would not describe bad. But yeah, it's too bad.
Kane's first game was Arx Fatalis. Back in 2002.
It's on the original Xbox.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think it's expensive now.
First-person perspective game set in a world whose sun has failed.
That's bad.
That is bad.
You're gonna get
Hold on.
Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at the Gaming Discourse. I'm stalling to give you some time. YouTube.com/Gaming Discourse.
Internet has to load, so.
I'm here to make me.
Just do it. Just do it. Go
Chicago kick shot.
No, please, God.
The deep shout.
The deep shout. That's the one where I forget what his brother's name is, but they do the mind wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
And Adam Sandler just punches himself a bunch because he's like, okay, you win. I lost. And he just keeps hitting himself.
Oh, yeah.
I need to watch that.
Not a crazy amount, about $50.
Okay. And it was Harvey Keitel, but Fonz was in that. What is his name?
Henry Winkler.
Yeah.
Winkler. I don't know where I got Klein from.
I watched that movie a lot when I was younger.
Yeah, I don't know if it would. A lot of Sandler comedies don't. We're not going to. Bye. See you next week.
Bye.
Check out Gaming Discourse FM.